and our chairperson Dr. Rashmi Singh Madam, and Srihari Borikalji, ABVP National Secretary, and Aniket College and Vaibhavji, and other dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. And my dear friends, good afternoon to you all. See, I hope all you got some idea about our conference coming these two days. I hope you will be enjoying this conference, and also it's my token of gratitude to say thanks to our Chief Guest, Honorable Home Minister, Honorable External Affairs Minister Sushma ji, and I extended my thanks to our Chairperson Rashmi Singh Madam, and our mentor, WOSY mentor and educationist Sunil ji, and Aniket ji, and Srihari Borikar ji, and other dignitaries. Thank you all and everyone, and thank you to all our delegates from all the chapters in India. Thank you very much.
Back to the track. I'm not telling that you'll be back in the inaugural sessions. We are now going ahead. It's time for you to actually increase the capacity of your brain. Time for you to learn something, because we have the great minds of the world around us over here, sitting right in front of you. I request all of you, those who have come all the way from different cities in India, this is not the time for you to sleep. I've seen many of you doing that. Time for you to learn something, because this is not the kind of opportunity that you can get every day. And I'm so proud to say, so glad to say, that I am part of WOSY, the World Organization of Students and Youth, where they can give me the chance to learn. Rashmi ma'am, thank you very much for believing in me. And I know I can do it better in the future. Anyways, before we start with this session, this is called Plenary session. After this, we have group discussion. Now, for group discussion, since we are quite large in number. Oh, we go to later? Oh, no problem. Okay. So, we have our guest of honors. I heartily welcome Shri Sakand Tayal, retired ambassador. WOSY chairperson, Dr. Rashmi Singh ji. WOSY Secretary General, Shri Aniket College. Secretary, West Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Navtej Sarna. Secretary Amir, Ministry of External Affairs, Ms Sujata Mehta. Now, I'd like to hand over the call today to my co-host to introduce the dignitaries. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all for our first session on development and peace. May I introduce you all our guests for today's session. Firstly, we have our retired Ambassador Sakand Tayal. After joining the Indian Foreign Service in 1976, Mr. Tayal served in Indian mission in Sofia, Warsaw, Geneva, and Moscow. He was the Indian Consul General in Johannesburg in 1996-1998 and Houston 2002-2003, and Ambassador of India to Uzbekistan in 2005-2008. Since 2008, he was Ambassador of India to the Republic of Korea. He is currently a visiting professor in the Department of East Asian Studies in the Delhi University. Ambassador retired Tayal has wide experience in both bilateral and multilateral diplomacy and has been a frequent speaker on contemporary affairs. I would invite Pratishta Karora from Nepal Hyderabad chapter to please felicitate our ambassador with a bouquet and mementos. Our next guest, Navtej Sarna Secretary West, M&ER, studied commerce and law at Delhi University and joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1980. He is presently Secretary West, M&ER, and has earlier served as a diplomat in Moscow, Warsaw, Thimphu, Geneva, Tehran, and Washington, D.C. He was the longest-serving spokesperson of the Minister of External Affairs from 2002-2008. From 2008 to 2012, he was the Indian Ambassador to Israel. Mr. Sarna is the author of several fiction and non-fiction books. He speaks Russian and Polish apart from English and Indian language. May I request Vishwamitra from Bangladesh Mysore chapter to felicitate our guest. Ms Sujata Mehta joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1980s after earning a Master of Philosophy in Political Science. She served in Indian mission in Moscow, Dhaka, and at the UN in New York, apart from staying to the UN in Gaza and in New York. She has also served as Undersecretary and Joint Secretary in M&ER and as Deputy Secretary Director and as Joint Secretary in the Prime Minister's Office. She also served on deputation to the UN in Gaza and in New York. She served as Ambassador to Spain and as Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, before returning to headquarters in July 2013 as Additional Secretary and later Special Secretary. May I request Mani from Afghanistan from Hyderabad chapter to please felicitate our guest, please. And of course with us we have our Dr. Rashmi Das, our chairperson of the World Organization of Students and Youth, and Mr. Aniket Kale, Secretary General of WOSY. Now may I request retired Ambassador please to come open this ceremony, please.
Thank you, MC. Dr. Rashmi, Dr. Ankit Kale, my friends Sri Navtej Sarna Secretary, Sujata Mehta, all the young energy present here, a very, very good afternoon to all of you. I am really delighted to be here in the midst of youth, the young, the future of this world, our tomorrow. All of you from different parts of the world, assembled first in India and now in Delhi. As I look back and as I look at you all, I feel you are extraordinarily powerful and capable and able. You have all the accumulated knowledge of the last 5,000 years at your fingertips, in your cell phone, in your computers. We used to go to the libraries and refer to encyclopedias if we wanted to have some information. Then you have extraordinary ability to communicate. You can put your thoughts in the domain outside and communicate with thousands of people, millions of people through the internet. When I was your age, the only recourse for us was to write letters to the editor. So times have changed, and times have changed very, very dramatically in your favor, in the favor of the youth. A couple of years back, there was a chain mail on the internet, which sort of put you and your city in a perspective of, or in comparison to the universe. So you click where you are, then for us Delhi will come, the whole city will be on the computer screen. You have another click, it will show Delhi as a speck on the map of India. You do another click of the mouse, and it will show India in a global map, 7% of the area visible, but somewhat small. Another click, Earth in the solar system, just one of the planets, with many planets being larger than Earth. Another click, Sun, one of the stars in the Milky Way. Another click, Milky Way itself is one of the galaxies of thousands of millions of galaxies, and then the universe. So it gave a perspective that where we are, either we are very, very insignificant, we are just nothing. If you think in terms of the universe, the whole universe, and where Earth is and where we are. But if you look at it from another perspective, then we human beings are also very unique. Maybe, of course, extraordinary. As yet there is no evidence of any intelligent life in any other planet or in any other star. So we are unique. And we are intelligent, at least on this earth. In the animal kingdom, we are at the top of the heap. We are the most evolved species. We can think, we can work for our today, for our present, and can plan our future. So this is extraordinary ability. But have we used these faculties, these powers well? That is the question which is related to peace and development. If you look at the last 5,000 years of recorded history, history mostly records war, death, destruction, misery, disease. Even if you see some very glorious symbols of the past, pyramids, but there was slavery behind pyramids. It was built on the back of slave labor. Even if you look at our Taj Mahal, it is said that taxation increased so much that there was a lot of starvation behind these magnificent monuments which one sees all over the world. So for most of the people, for most of the last 5,000 or 4,500 years or so, life was brutal, short and unhappy, as philosopher Thomas Hobbes wrote in 1651, and I quote, "Continual fear and danger of violent death, and the life of man solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short," unquote. But times have changed for the better. Human race has got rid of plague, of smallpox, of polio. There used to be millions of people dying of plague, etc. If you look at the medieval history. Power seems to have shifted from the ruling classes to the people through democracy. Development is part of the agenda. No government, no leader, no country can think of having any kind of a policy without development being an absolutely integral part of the agenda. And for development, peace is absolutely necessary. As our very revered President Nelson Mandela said, and I quote, "Peace is the greatest weapon for development that any person can have," unquote. So true. And the development of science and technology have given tremendous resources, tremendous power in our hands. If we want all of us, then there can be total eradication of poverty from this world. Total eradication of all kinds of normal diseases. There is a huge opportunity that billions of people live a happy life. Not just the elite. In ancient times only the elite lived a happy life, the rich lived a happy life. But most of the people were toiling, were striving, were working very, very hard. But we are in times where the masses can have a happy life. But it seems that we are making a mess of it. Why? Because there are some ideologies, some philosophies that divide human beings. You talk about human instincts of territory and reproduction and this and that. I think one of the bad human traits is to try to dominate over others. Whether you are in a group, in your family, in the society, in countries, some people, they want to dominate over others. And it has been there all through history. In the beginning of time, when there was a caveman, it was through brute force. Whoever was the most powerful, he was trying to dominate over others. Later it evolved, whoever was more rich, whoever had more knowledge, was trying to dominate over others. And now, in the last couple of 100 years or more, this domination is coming through ideologies and misinterpretation of religions, against which we have to guard if we want to have peace. But there have been thinkers and people, great philosophers, who have tried to unite, who have tried to join, who have tried to have more harmony in the society. Of course, you are in the country of one of those, Mohan Gandhi, whose whole life is a lesson in how to join, how to unite, how to harmonize, how to smooth over differences. And of course, I have served in South Africa, so I have a great, great regard for President Nelson Mandela, who had the same message. And ultimately, peace will come from the minds of men. I will not be gender neutral here, because I will not like to blame the women for whatever wars have been happened in the past, because apparently all Hitler, or you see all the tyrants have been men. And I like to quote from UNESCO's constitution, which says in the beginning, and I quote, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed," unquote. We have great reverence for people who talk about peace, and I like to quote Dalai Lama. He says, "Peace must first be developed within an individual. If a person is at peace with himself or herself, only then he can be or she can be at peace with the outside world, with his family or her family and society and country." So that is a very great philosophical truth in this, in which you may like to ponder peace within and peace without. Peace within, peace without. And how do you have peace within and in your own understanding, in your own life, in your own daily routine? For that, perhaps education is extremely important. It is supremely important to inculcate an attitude of brotherhood, sisterhood, harmony and peace. Because a wrong kind of education can poison the mind and can create great divisions, great barriers and great casts between people, human beings, and who look different. Again, I'd like to quote one eminent educationist, Dr. Maria Montessori, who said, and I quote, "I believe that laying the foundations for peace through education is the most effective and the most constructive way of opposing the wars," unquote. Having said that, I must confess that our generation apparently has failed in inculcating this sense of peaceful living together among the masses, among the brothers and sisters of the whole world. In one part we have perhaps succeeded, that there has not been an atomic war after 1945. But otherwise, if you look around us in Africa, in Latin America, Asia, so many small wars are going on. So our generation has not been successful, or has been very partially successful, and the onus of promoting peace, preserving peace, having peace rests on your shoulders, on the shoulders of the young generation, on your shoulders. How will you do that? Just resolve differences by argument and persuasion, not by conflicts and by force. In a very broad way, one can say that even in your daily life, mostly people say, "I am right and you are wrong." But if you can slightly refine it, "I am right, you may also be right, let us discuss it." And I think the highest level of this kind of a peaceful discourse, peaceful interaction can be that both you and I have a viewpoint or a belief or a religious belief, political belief, but let us discuss and go forward together. Go forward together. That is perhaps very important for peace as well as development. That all of us, if we work together, can bring heaven on earth. We have the tools, we have the technology. And by combining peace and development with this harmony, with this tolerance, with this acceptance of differences, one can make a total difference in this world. So my exhortation to all my young friends here will be that all of us must be together from different parts of the globe, as I see it in front of me, from different parts of the world. All of you are here, of all races, of all colors, of all faiths, of all genders, and of all ages, together as we belong to one human race. I would like to thank you. And thoughts are very important. Deeds are important. Deeds flow from thoughts. So I would like to end my remarks with a quotation from Swami Vivekananda, a very great philosopher, thinker, a great human soul who traversed this earth about a century back. And his photo is there right at the front, right here. And Swami Vivekananda said, and I quote, "We are what our thoughts have made us. So take care of what you think. Words are secondary. Thoughts live. They travel far." Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I invite Ms Sujata Mehta to please come and give her speech, please. Sorry, Miss.
Thank you. I'd first of all like to thank our host, Dr. Rashmi Singh, and fellow panelists, Ambassador Sakand Tayal and Ambassador Navtej Sarna, and to say that I'm extremely happy to be here where there are, I believe, young people representing 60 countries. That's what Dr. Rashmi Singh told me. And that many of you who are here, or most of you who are here, are actually students pursuing various courses here in India, and that you have taken time out from your work to come and be here at this conference today on looking at a new world. I think for us in India it's a matter of great pride and honor that students of so many countries come here, pursue education and training here, and it is our hope that you feel welcome here and that you feel a sense of belonging. I think that is something which is extremely important for us. And I say this because part of my own work involves looking at issues to do with training foreign students, foreign scholars here in India. The theme for discussion today, peace and development, is an extremely apt one, particularly as we look at the world today because of several reasons. 2015 is an important year. In international relations, we look at things in terms of some years being emblematic years when they bring together representations of several different tendencies. From that point of view, 2015 is an interesting and an important year. It is 70 years since the end of the Second World War, the last Great War. It is 70 years since the United Nations was created, which was an important effort at creating what we call global governance, of trying to arrange international relations in a way that the threat of war can be avoided. Mr. Tayal just spoke of the UNESCO Charter, that the defenses of peace have to be created in the minds of men. At a more concrete level, the United Nations was created as a body which could help actually take concrete actions to avert a future war along the lines of what had happened in the years 1914, 1918, the First Great War, or 1939, 1945, World War II. The end of World War II saw the creation of the United Nations, as I said. It also saw certain actions undertaken to reconstruct the countries that had been devastated by war. There was the Marshall Plan, which was put together to reconstruct the countries of Europe that had been devastated by the war. And similarly, there was a reconstruction effort in Japan, which had been devastated, virtually annihilated by the two nuclear bombs in August 1945. So that was one strand of activity which began in 1945. In a sense, that year also marked the beginning of the end of colonialism. India achieving freedom in 1947 was perhaps the first concrete representation of the end of colonialism. From that point on, colonialism was in retreat, and so there was a new form of international relations that came into being. Asia, and then it spread into Africa in the early 60s, and from then on, international relations started to become, in some ways, more equal. All of this has brought greater focus on what we all can do together to create a better world. And this is born of a belief, and in fact stronger than that, a conviction, that it is possible to make a difference, and that working together it is possible to overcome some of the historical legacies that have persisted over time, whether it is poverty, whether it is disease, whether it is hunger. We have come to recognize that working together at the international level, setting aside differences that may divide us as countries, it is possible to achieve huge advances in the common good. It is through such cooperation that it has been possible to eradicate smallpox, that it has been possible to develop agriculture to a point that we can now hope to feed everyone, and so forth. But at the root of all of this, it is important to underline that we need to cooperate. These ends cannot be met by any one country working in isolation or working individually, but that we have to cooperate. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face today is that of climate change. I think each one of us, all 61 countries represented here, each one of us have felt the rigors of, the sort of depredations of climate change. And climate change, like other scourges in the past, shows very clearly that national boundaries do not stop the dangers that disease, or in our time climate change, pose. I'm sure those of us who are in Delhi, all of you who have come from whichever part of India you're in, the viral disease H1N1 is on everyone's mind. H1N1 doesn't require visas and passports to be transmitted. Similarly, cyclones, hurricanes, avalanches, tsunamis, none of these pause at national barriers. So all of us do need to work together, whether rich, poor or middle income. We all need to work together to tackle each of these problems. And it is from that perspective that the work that we all do, my colleagues and I, in foreign ministries here in India or indeed in your countries, it is with these objectives in mind that we all work together to cooperate and to try and carry along with us the people in the societies in which we live, to similarly create a sense of ownership and a sense of partnership in our work. So it is with that perspective that I have to say that I'm very glad that this particular event is being arranged, because it brings together people from young people, a particularly important resource, to talk about issues that we can all tackle collectively. It is also for that reason that I'm actually going to stop here now, because I think it is more important that we engage in dialogue, that we engage in debate, and that we talk about issues that are of interest, rather than that this be an entirely unilateral declamation of what I think, and that you don't get a chance to actually say what drives you and what interests you. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to a debate.
Thank you, ma'am, for this fruitful speech. May I now require Mr. Sarna, please come and deliver your speech, please.
Good afternoon.
I first thank our hosts for inviting me, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here on the same panel as Ambassadors Sakand Tayal and Sujata Mehta. First of all, my sympathies to all of you. I know exactly what it feels in a post-lunch session to listen to 3 speeches, and it's quite obvious from the angles of certain heads in the audience. Some have reached the wood, some are tending to reach towards the wood, and some have found wood behind them. Wood is rare nowadays, so genuine wood, if you can find it, please reach for it. So I'll try not to add to your miseries and give you a long speech. I think Ambassador Tayal has already set the philosophical backdrop for the subject that has been put for this session, peace and development, and Ambassador Mehta has already given you a very detailed view of the international cooperation landscape and how that works. I'd just like to say, take off from here and just set a few points which I hope will generate some questions and interaction. I think firstly, it's very important to realize what is peace. And peace is not simply the absence of war. I think peace is a far greater concept for which has to be actively striven for and achieved, not simply that nowadays we have no war so we are at peace. It's a mindset, it is an approach of governance, it is an approach towards inclusivity, it is an approach towards international cooperation. At the same time, I think in today's world, conflict is simply not war. I mean, there was a time when it was very clear as to say who are the two sides to a conflict, and they were usually nation states, or they were tribes, or they were clans, or there were groups of nation states, as in the world was. But today you have conflict of all natures. You have conflict between states, you have conflicts within states, you have conflicts between center and states, you have ethnic conflicts, you have religious conflicts, and you have even silent conflicts which do not come up as war or killing people, but if there's a conflict within a society which is a silent, unspoken conflict, it very often becomes a direct enemy of development. At the same time, we see that the main thing, what is development? I think development is also, we must be very clear, it's not just economic growth. It's possible that economic growth, which is a necessary factor of development, may lead to development. But if economic growth is not channelized in a certain way, then actually what you may be doing is setting the seeds for another conflict. So development has to be of the human individual as a whole living in a certain society, whether it is his economic well-being, his social well-being, the structures within society, the structures of governance, the structures of marrying different viewpoints within a society, and then within the world. I think that is really global development, and all that we are trying to do as diplomats is in our own narrow little furrows. We are trying to move the world towards that. Now why? I mean, it's a given that you can't have development and lack of peace, or that peace is necessary for. You can find any number of quotations saying that without peace there can be no development, and without development there can be no peace. But why is it so? Because when you don't have peace, you have conflict, and conflicts cost money. and your nation's resources, the world's total resources, are limited. I'm sure many of you are economic students. You have the old guns and butter argument. You can only have this much money to spend, and if you spend this much on guns, you have only this much left for butter. And conflicts today are extremely, extremely expensive. Ambassador Tayal mentioned that you're a very lucky generation, that you have Google and you have internet at your fingertips. Yes, you are. But you also have problems which our generation didn't see as an everyday news heading. We didn't know about terrorism, for instance, when we were at your age. The Munich Olympics was a terrorist attack, and the whole world looked at it. There was, once in a while there was a terrorist attack. You didn't have 10 on the front page every morning. So, to fight these new dangers, nations spend a lot of money. To give you one example of a figure I had here, in Afghanistan, which has been a very unfortunate conflict-ridden land for years, the GDP of Afghanistan 1 year, 2013, was $20.3 million US. And the cost of war in Afghanistan, the US cost of war, is about $100 million. 5 times the cost of the entire GDP of that country. Now, if the situation had been that the US could have given that $100 million to Afghanistan to set up schools and roads and houses, how much difference would it have made to lives of the ordinary people? And if you see the difference between Afghanistan on one hand, which has been conflict-ridden within the SAARC region, and Bhutan on the other hand, which is a country which is known for its peace and its concept of gross national happiness, Bhutan's per capita income is 4 times that of Afghanistan. And to show that this actually is a direct impact on your development, Bhutan figures 136th on the Human Development Report of the UNDP, whereas Afghanistan is 175. So there is a very clear example of what happens when there is conflict. And when nations come out of conflict and can divert all their resources to development, it makes a sea change. Africa, for instance. Africa, as my co-speaker said earlier, war didn't end with World War II. There have been 120 wars in the world since World War II. And the cost of conflict, of civil wars and interstate and intrastate conflicts within Africa itself over a period of 15 years has been calculated to be $300 billion. $300 billion could have changed the face of Africa. But there are countries in Africa which have come out. Sierra Leone is the most striking example. Sierra Leone had a civil war for 12 years or 11 years. Thereafter it has had 3 elections. It's already moved away from the qualification of being called a fragile state to a low income state. It's heading towards a middle income state. In 50 years it's expected to be a net lender to other countries because it has maintained peace. It's been hit by Ebola, but for that its path is on the upswing. So I mention all these points to say that nations have to address these issues. And when we have to address it at 2 levels. One, within the country itself. So how do you prevent conflicts within the country? And here is where the entire issue of governance comes in. There are certain countries who are forced to make themselves militarized societies because they haven't progressed, they haven't institutionalized or strengthened their political institutions in a way that they could have in a democratic manner, so that they didn't have to have only guns to control people, but you had political institutions. I don't need to give you comparisons. Even even with India and several other countries here. Nations build constitutions so that conflicts are diffused. Our constitution, for instance, is sufficiently good document to diffuse any conflicts between center, state, language, ethnicity, religion, water sharing, all possible. And where it fails, you have a conflict. You have a conflict in one state or the other. And then something has to be done to address these issues. Similarly, on an international level, how do you address this? By regional cooperation, by creating shared interests. That is the logic of regional cooperation. Today India is trying to work within SAARC, India is trying to work within its larger neighborhood by increasing connectivity, creating projects in which there is a shared interest of both countries or more than two countries, so that each country, before it steps into conflict, has second thoughts. Look, if we go there, we're going to have a problem with our gas. We're going to have a problem with our electricity. We're going to have problems with water. We're going to have a problem reaching that road. We are going to have a problem getting our goods across into the third country beyond. So once we begin to think in these ways, this is the basis of regional cooperation to prevent conflict. That's why we say we need a peaceful periphery for our development. Because if all the time you're worried about what's happening in every corner of your border, you're not going to have either the time or the resources. And different groups, different countries address these. You have the European Union, which has brought 28 countries together and opened all their borders. So there go the conflicts about borders to begin with. So each region, with varying success, does this. So I just thought I would raise these points to you, not, there's no panacea to these, but these are all these issues and these will be with us. But if we are able to address the issues of development, if we are able to create a better economic, social situation in each country, we will end up taking away people who may go to conflict. For instance, terrorism. What happens? Where do people find recruits for terrorism? In poorer places, in poorer societies, in vulnerable societies, where people don't have regular jobs, people don't have any careers. So they say, well, may as well here's somebody giving me a gun and $200, so let me go. And it's not today, it's nothing new. When the Crusades started in the 11th century, there were economic problems in Northern Europe. There was a famine 1 year before the Crusaders set out towards the Holy Land, because they didn't have anything to do. So they said, okay, here's somebody giving me a horse and a gun and bows and arrows and money, so let me go, whatever he achieves. So again, if you want to shrink the recruiting grounds, you need development. So these are I think I've already gone on far too long without intending to. We're happy to sit along with my co-panelists and discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You have heard a lot, right? Now time for you to speak up. Now what I mean to say is this is the time for question and answers. You have your doubts, you have any question, the dignitaries are all ready for you to answer the questions and clear all your doubts. Now let me tell you one thing, you have your separate mics in front of you. Do not switch it on all at once. Yeah, there are some simple rules that you have to follow. If anyone has any doubt, I feel like I'm somewhere in the airport. You're landing now, please switch off it. So all I'm saying, that when you want to ask a question, raise your hand and switch on your mic, and then you can ask the question. Alright? So, anyone? Very good.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joan from Pune chapter. I have a
You can sit down. Sit down here.
I have a question for Mr. Sarna. Mr. Sarna, we've been talking about development and peace today, and in the profile description, and you told us that you've been working in Israel, that's right? As an Indian representative in Israel.
Yes, I did work in Israel.
Yes, so sir, I would like to know your point of view on the conflict that is happening there, and I would also like to know the contribution that, as a representative of India, that has been given to solve this problem, this conflict that is happening there till today. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, as you know, it's one of the most intractable conflicts on the face of the earth, and it has been going on, well, in very technical terms, at least since 1948, since the formation of Israel. But it is an older conflict. And depending on where you stand in the conflict and what you believe in, some people would, take it right back to the Old Testament. And of course some see it in later terms. The fact is that it is a conflict which now has become extremely complicated because it involves the creation of another state, the state of Palestine. And obviously, creation of a state means giving it that much land, giving it security, giving it its capital, giving it its borders, giving it its airspace, giving it its radio frequencies. And the way it has happened since 1948, the two parties have not been able to come to a meeting ground on where all this is going to be done. How, for instance, is the capital of Jerusalem going to be divided, if at all? Israel and the Palestinians have been holding talks for decades. There have been some positive developments in the 90s. They had the Oslo Accords. There have been hundreds of resolutions in the UN. But until and unless there is meeting of minds of the leaders of the two parties involved, with or without international encouragement, I'm afraid nothing much is going to happen. Besides, there have been complicating factors in the meanwhile. The region around Israel and Palestine is now very volatile. So obviously nobody is in the mood to make concessions of territory. The settlements have increased more and more into the West Bank. So new facts have been created on the ground which is going to be difficult to reverse. The Palestinians themselves have been divided between those who were in Gaza and those who were in Ramallah. So you have all these complicating factors. There's no dearth of possible solutions. People have made careers on the conflict of finding solutions. You'll find books, you'll find maps, instant solutions, but who's going to implement it? India has a good relationship with Israel, and India has had a very, very old relationship with the Palestinians in terms of support for their cause. And we are talking constantly to both sides on it. We've not been playing honest broker in the Middle East because we feel that there are far more powerful and far more influential players there who have been active in the region. Next.
Okay. There's a guy with a kind of bluish yellowish shirt. Yeah, I feel it that way.